Hello and welcome to my video about two of my favorite basses, two of my favorite brands as well. This is the Spector Euro and the G&L L2000. So I've called the video Stuart versus Leo because of course these basses were designed by two of the most important people in bass guitar design, at least in my opinion, but I know in a lot of other people's opinion as well. So I hope you enjoy that. I hope you find it informative. If I make any mistake or you have any corrections, don't hesitate to comment. And it's always nice to get a like and a subscribe on the channel as well if you find this useful. So I have a cheat sheet in front of me, so you'll see me looking down throughout. I'll also put in the comment, or at least in the description of the video, the time where the sound sample starts. So if you don't want to listen to me waffling on about Spector and G&L and you want to hear the guitars, you can skip directly to that part. Okay, so the reason why I'm reviewing these two bass guitars is because, in my opinion, they're two of the best. They're certainly my favorite. They're both designed around the same time. So the NS2, the first bass by Spector, which this one is inspired from, was released in 1979. The first L2000 in 1980. So they're actually from similar periods, and they're both considered modern design, even though that's 40 years ago, and they're both active basses, so they're a departure from the traditional sound of what a lot of people consider the standard of bass, with the precision and the jazz that Leo Fender designed when he owned the Fender company. So they're both active, both modern, but also very different. I have certain types of music that I prefer to play one versus the other, and I explained the reasons during the video. So as we said, the basses we're looking at, this is a Euro 4 LX. This is built in the Czech Republic, and this is a G&L L2000, which is built in the USA, still in the original California factory. The topics I'm going to cover during this video, we'll talk a little bit about history, because both of these brands, both of these basses have a lot of history behind them, and then we'll have a look at the cases, we'll have a look at the headstock, the neck, the body. So from I guess a physical ergonomic point of view, we'll have a look at the pickups, the electronics and the control, how different they are. At the end we'll have some sound sample. I'll play through different settings, different types of music, and as I said, I'll put a timestamp for it so you can shortcut. So the history, Spector was actually founded in 1976 in New York. Famously, Nate Steinberger designed in 1977 the body shape. We'll talk about that, but the famous Spector body shape, and the NS2, the two pickup version, came out in 1979, and that's where this design comes from. That's the origins, the DNA of this bass guitar here. There was a big expansion of the Spector brand in the 80s, with a move to EMG pickups, with a move to the move of the ownership, with the company being bought by Kramer in 85, and it's also the time when Spector gained a lot of notoriety. So it was used by Sting. There's a famous white Spector that was used by Sting. It was also a big part of the 80s US rock, maybe the hair metal with Nicky Six, but not only, followed by a lot of other people. And the Spector tone actually appears on a lot of very famous music. The Black Album by Metallica, Mother's Milk by Red Hot Chili Peppers, but also some Madonna recordings, some Alice in Chains, some Pantera, etc. So a big variety, and a lot of recordings done on Spectors, and a lot of touring done on Spectors as well. Now for G&L, there's a similar timeline, in fact. So it was founded in 1979 in Fullerton, California, by Leo Fender and his longtime business partner George Fullerton, who was also involved with him in his previous ventures. Now Leo Fender had sold, as probably everybody knows, had sold the Fender company to CBS in '65, and then he worked during a lot of the 70s for Music Man, designing a lot of basses, but had a falling out with them as well, and founded his own company with George Fullerton again, G&L, in 1979. There's a lot of innovation. The L2000 itself, this bass, was designed and came out first in 1980, so very, very modern for that time. It's still considered a modern bass nowadays, at least in my opinion. And a lot of innovation on it, with the magnetic field design, pickups, the tritone circuit, the bridge, etc. And they also had quite a lot of famous musicians using G&L instruments, not just basses, of course, G&L guitars. So Tom Hamilton of Aerosmith uses G&L basses quite a lot, but other musicians using G&Ls are Peter Frampton, In Excess, Jerry Cantrell of Alice in Chains, the 90s band Everclear, Dan Lutz, even Wanda Ortiz of the Iron Maidens, who does great work at impersonating Steve Harris on a G&L instead of a Fender Precision. Now, I'm going to put this back. We're going to have a quick look at the cases. Both of them are very similar in quality, very high quality build. One difference is that for the Spector it's an option, so you have to buy it separately essentially, whereas this case here came with my G&L, and there's a bit of case candy, I guess. Both bass guitars come with all the tools you need in terms of bridge adjustment, so you get your Allen keys, of course. But with G&L, because it's a USA model, there's a little bit more case candies. It comes in this nice black envelope here, and you get a spec sheet with all the details and the date when your bass was created and how it was, what components it has. There's a bit of documentation on truss rod adjustment as well. Of course, you can get all that information on Spector freely on the web, but it's nice to have it. And it also comes with a cert. Hopefully that can focus here. You can get a cert signed by Phyllis Fender, Leo Fender's wife, who is still honorary chairman of the company. Okay, now let's talk about the headstocks. Now for the Spector, it's a very iconic design. It's a two-a-side. I'm going to try to get a good picture for you here. It's a very iconic design, two-a-side in terms of the tuning keys. It's actually one of the things that were copied a lot from Spector, just like from Fender, I guess. The headstock was also borrowed, as well as the body of a design by some other companies. The tuners on this one are the Goto tuners, which are relatively new to the Euro series, departure from the Schaller. I think, in my opinion, they're better, they're a little bit bigger, they're quite good, I like them. One difference though is that you cannot get a hip shot converter for them, so I had to convert a GB7 and just remove this part and put in the original. On the G&L, the tuners are in line, so it's I guess a more traditional design, a more Fendery design. It also has some copywriting history associated with it, in that at the start Leo Fender was using a design that was too similar to what's on the Precisions and the Jazz, so he was kind of forced by the Fender company to depart and add a little bit of design to make it more specific to G&L and look less like the original design he had come up with himself. The tuners are proprietary. They're very good as well. They're ultralight, and ironically, even though they're proprietary, it's easier to get a hip shot extender for these ones. So this is BT1, very common, very widely available. Although be careful, it's BT1 on the USA models, but the Tribute series of G&L have different specs. So if you're looking for an extender for that, it would be a different model. Now, talking about the neck, on the Spector we have a 3-piece neck design, and it's a neck through, as you see from the back here. So you have 3 pieces of maple going all the way through the back of the base, all the way to the top of the headstock. So it's great design, a very beautiful design, very beautiful instrument. The neck also has the iconic inlays, these crown inlays that are very famous for Spector. These ones have not been copied by the companies that copied other things from Spector, but these are absolutely beautiful. They're crown inlays. The neck is 24 frets, which is actually one of the differences with the G&L, which only has 21. And the width at the nut is quite similar, in fact, even though the rest of the neck is wider. It gets wider when it comes here, but at the nut it's 41.7 millimeters versus 41.3 for the G&L. The radius now is very different. Radius is 406 millimeters, whereas on the G&L it's 201. Switching base again. Now, regarding the body, that's another thing that is again very different between these two bass guitars. You could say that this one, the G&L, is a lot less of a departure from the traditional design in Fender bass guitars. Although I find it a lot more comfortable. I never really warmed to the precision of a jazz design or the feel of it, at least. Whereas here you have a very thin but also quite modern looking bass, so I like that a lot more. Construction of the body here is a 2-piece maple, and as you can see with the bolt-on neck, which I didn't show previously, look with a six bolt design here. Very solid as well, very sturdy. It's quite maybe tiny bit lighter than the Spector. Both bases have locking saddle bridges, so that means you have a lot of stability here. Another difference here, I had to switch to get the locks on here. This bass doesn't come with locks, whereas the Spector does come out of a box with shallow strap locks. Going back to the Spector here, because of course when we talk about the body of the Spector, we talk about the Ned Steinberger design and that famous curved body here you can see here. Okay, so that's super comfortable. There is no bass more comfortable than this, in my opinion. It's also perfectly balanced. It also has a good battery access here, which is not the case on the G&L. So a few differences here, in fact a lot of differences in terms of body, not necessarily one better than the other, but quite a few differences. We're coming now to pickups and electronics. So again, quite a lot of differences here. On the Spector you have, at least on this one, you have an EMG precision pickup reversed. You have an EMG jazz pickup. You have a Spector tone pump inside, which is a preamp. There are options available on the Spector Euro. You can get Aguilar pickups, Bartolini pickups. There's even a limited series at the moment with Fishman pickup. You can get Darkglass capsule or an EMG preamp instead of a Spector tone pump. And of course, if you go custom with a USA Spector, you get all the options you could think of. Now, in terms of the G&L, the electronics and pickups are very different. They are proprietary to G&L, designed by Leo Fender. So you have a magnetic field design pickups here in the shape of two humbuckers. You have a tritone circuit, which I'll explain the settings again a little bit later. Some people find it very confusing because there's too many options. I think it's fantastic because there's a lot more flexibility, a lot more autonomy. You can switch a lot of things without worrying about pedals and amps. Everything is proprietary, whether it's the preamp inside, whether it's the tritone controlled, or the MFT pickups. So in terms of control, I'll start with G&L because I have it in hand. The way this works is you have a three-way pickup selector here. So you can go to passive, which is one of the major plus, I think, compared to the Spector, because Spector is only active, whereas here you can go, sorry, over here you can go from passive to active with treble boost. In the middle you can go from series to parallel, series being the one I use the most because it acts essentially as a bass boost. And over here you have your pickup selector, so you can go neck pickup only, back pickup only, or of course use both of them. Here I think the Spector is better because instead of just switching between the pickups, you have the ability to balance them, so you can give maybe 60% to your P and you can give 80% to your J, so you can hear both of them at the same time. But you can decide how much of each one of them. One point about the controls here, both of them lack independent control for the mids. So I control that with my Darkglass pedal here, but of course that can be considered a negative point because you don't have that control on board. For me, I don't suffer much from it. I just use the settings on the pedal and it works fine. Difference as well here, so the control layout is you have your volume for your J pickup, you have a volume for your reverse P pickup, you have the boost only treble control and the boost only bass control here, whereas the tone controls on the G&L are cut as opposed to boost, so works slightly different, but in terms of usability it doesn't really make a major difference. And again, you have a bridge as well with saddle locks here, just like we mentioned earlier. Now, in terms of sound, I'm going to switch off a microphone and we're going to try to record some sound, just so you get an idea. I hope the video doesn't end up being too long for everyone. I'm recording here through this camera, which, as you can see, has direct input, 2 of them. You can use XLR, you can use a jack. And so I'm going to switch off a microphone and I'm going to play through a bit of both of these bass guitars now. Only. Do a bit of J or bridge pickup only. bit of slap. Switch for bass, excuse the playing. I hope the sound is good and you're not getting too much of the bass sound through the microphone of the camera, because it turns out you can't mute it while you are recording. I decided to do the samples at the same time in the same video, so hopefully there's not too much sound pollution here between quotes. Okay, so we're now on the second bass, and I'm going to try first the P pickup in passive mode. Testing my volume. Bridge pickup in active mode. Okay, then we'll do a bit of the two pickups together, which is my favorite place to go, series, and I'll switch back from the active boost and have just active without the treble boost here. So same song again, and then I'll move on. Put in drop D, do a bit of pick. Slap, which you might have noticed is not my forte in the Spector segment. This was enjoyable by everyone. As usual, thanks very much for watching.